This is the DLR Cast, the essential podcast for fans of Diamond David Lee Roth. All right, once again, here we are at the DLR Cast, your podcast by and for fans of David Lee Roth. Darren, here we are at the tail end of a tough week, a long week, and Angel's got to smile every once in a while, so why not on me, my friend?
Wow, that's a deeper one. That's definitely from No Big Ting, right?
You are close. That is from A Little Luck, but from the same album, Your Filthy Little Mouth. So there you go. What's happening? How are you? Good to see you again, Darren.
Likewise. Great to connect as always. You know, pulling back the curtain on a Sunday night. The Super Bowl is, 2 weeks ago? Yet it feels like it might have been 2 months ago. Like, you think about it, all this GameStop stuff, that was probably like 3 weeks ago, and that feels like it's 6 months ago. So who knows what day it is anymore.
Dude, I can't keep track of things. Time is just a linear concept at this point. I'm not even sure what the hell is going on.
Time is a linear concept. That's from She's My Machine?
It could be, possibly. Or no, maybe it could. I think it's somewhere in the graphic novel sci-fi dystopian adventure from DavidLeeRoth.com that we talked about a couple months ago.
Yeah, apologies to our listener who I offended by saying that the Roth Project was not fully formed or anything like that. Apologies. He found a lot more meaning than we did, but maybe, when things slow down, I'll re-listen to the whole thing again.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff there. So, and always interesting stuff going on too. Not a huge amount of Dave news, but some Dave related stuff at the moment. Of course, Larry King Live passed away about a week or two ago. I think it was almost 2 weeks ago. And it got me thinking. I was reminded by a friend of mine actually that Dave appeared on Larry King Live back in 1988. A day after scaling the man-made 45-foot mountain at Tower Records in downtown in Hollywood there in promotion of the Skyscraper album.
David Lee Roth was making a lot of news back then. I think that kind of says a lot because the 88 era of Larry King, I'm not going to talk about his discography, the King discography per se, but Larry King was one of the biggest interviews of all time, if not the biggest. And when you were on his show, you were a newsmaker. You were a pop culture figure or news story that everyone was talking about from every age. So it just says a lot that Dave was on the show in 88.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you were a newsmaker, you were on it. And it was interesting to watch the interview. One, it was funny. But two, it's if you compare now, we know Dave's just this constant big smile on his face, right, and one non sequitur and quip, and it's a little bit tough to follow. And of course, we're all older now, but watching Larry King Live, it's a bit of more subdued, kind of genteel sort of almost Dave. I mean, not as, I don't want to say wired. It's so interesting to see the evolution of somebody like that. I know we talk about things like that a lot, but just it's really dramatic and noticeable. Like, when I go back and see interviews with, say, like Paul Stanley, it's very much a similar thing. And I was listening to part of about a week ago. One of these things, YouTube offers you recommendations. And about 6-7 years ago, Dave was on the very excellent Jay Moore podcast, comedian Jay Moore, and that was really interesting because, I mean, since then he's been on Rogan, he's been on Mark Maron, and sometimes it's kind of tough to follow along and kind of like, okay, I think he was asked a question about the band, but we just took a couple of side rails. I don't know. It just seemed that it was definitely a different sort of Dave on the Larry King Live video. Really good and fun to watch. A great time capsule to talk about. A great time capsule to go back and see at a time when Dave's solo career was at its very peak.
I think that you hit the nail on the head there. With somebody like Larry King, which I think it's unfair that some people mocked his interviewing skills. I'm going to say it's kind of the opposite, where he knew how to moderate and lead the dance. Where, why is Darren using dance analogies here? Well, I'm a master dancer. Everyone knows that. But
like Dave.
I mean, Dave leads the interviews. The last 15 years, you'd be like, hey, Dave, how's it going today? It's like a lightning bolt in your Cheerios, homeboy. Like,
exactly.
Anything he says. And you kind of want that from him. And very rarely do you have an interviewer who like call him out and be like, that makes no sense. And kind of Marc Maron did that, which was a refreshing thing in that interview, because Marc Maron just does not care, or at least that's the character of Marc Maron. He's grumpy.
And sometimes Maron, it's not so much. Sometimes it's not. I think it's partially he works without a net completely, but very oftentimes, and I've seen him. I've listened to so many of the interviews, but how many times have you heard an interview where like, oh my God, how do you not know that? It's not. Listen, it's tough to prepare for interviews. You know this, because you interview how many people a week in your job. But so there's a lot of preparation. I expect to know everything, but there's sometimes where it's just like, okay, how much prep did you put into this interview? And so every interviewer has a very different style. It's just really interesting to see Dave's style change throughout the years on these interviews, and it seems like the last 10 years or so, it's kind of a mugging and grimacing Dave, but go back on Larry King, it just seems to be a bit more kind of focused and it's just really interesting to watch. And that could be also partly too the gravitas of the situation, even gravitas, you know what I'm saying? In what I mean is who he's talking to, because Larry King was, of course, Larry King in 1988. Caller, are you there? We're here with Diamond David Lee Roth.
That's actually pretty good, Steve. I didn't know you had that in you. Wow. But because of the aforementioned YouTube algorithm, a couple of days ago, it pointed me to a Craig Ferguson interview that Roth did in 05 or 06 when he was promoting the Strumming with the Devil Bluegrass album. And I think that was the beginning of when Dave's interviews, he started using laughs as punctuation, or laughs as commas. Like he laughs immediately the second that he said the last syllable, so that you know it's a joke and that it's now okay for you to laugh. I think that was the kind of start of it around then. But an interesting moment in that interview is because Craig Ferguson's interview style was also a kind of I don't care, CBS doesn't pay me enough. It was obviously a character, but Craig Ferguson was a punk rocker before stand-up. He was he was known as Bing Hitler. That was his guy. Like, he played drums in punk bands. He's a really cool, interesting guy. And he point blank asks Roth, so is Van Halen ever going to reunite? And Dave goes, yeah, I think it's inevitable. I don't think I remember ever hearing him say that before that. And if that was 05 or 06, the reunion was announced in 07?
07, yep.
Yeah. So here's my question, which leads me down the wormhole. Was Dave coming back with Sammy in 02 and then the 03 and 04 tour that went into 05, where he was doing mostly Van Halen? Like, he did a little bit of Yankee Rose and Going Crazy, but it was pretty much a Van Halen show. Was that all the plan all along and Dave made the reunion happen?
I don't think – well – boy, that's a good one. I don't know if Dave necessarily made the reunion happen per se. I mean, I don't think it came down to – I mean, it was interesting because after Eddie died, you started – there was some interviews, and particularly in the lead up to Wolfie promoting what appears to be a great record, Mammoth WVH, that's coming in June, and he's been everywhere. But do you remember if was it before – after – I think – maybe, again, time is a linear concept. It could have been before Christmas and New Year's, but I remember reading or hearing, I think it was reading Wolfie talking about where basically it was like, yeah, give Dave a call, and it was like, and it just so happened Wolfie's real Van Halen musical upbringing as far as Van Halen was those first 6 albums. And I mean, I think Wolfie was as instrumental as putting this thing together, if you can believe that, and if there is such a thing for a kid who was 15 years old at the time. But I think that's perfectly plausible. Either one is kind of plausible. I think, though, when you look at those set lists back then, it was kind of that's where Dave thought his audience wanted to hear. And for the most part, you got to give him the hits. He's always about vaudeville and the big show, and you give the people what they want, right? And unfortunately, depending on your perspective, they want the Van Halen songs. I mean, it's me, you and I'd rather see about a 50-50 bent, you know? I mean, I would love to hear a Little Ain't Enough, because there's a good, and we see this with every veteran band, right? There's the toughest thing in the world must be to, if you're a Kiss fan, I think we talked about this with Doug Broad a couple weeks back, is some of these veteran bands, how do you pick a set list? Because somebody's going to get pissed off. Somebody's going to be unhappy, you know, because the audience is not 80-90% of the people who want to hear deep cuts from your filthy little mouth. Right. There's probably not even 20% there, right? But as an artist, don't you want to showcase your solo work more? But Dave also always wore that flag proudly, knew where his bread was buttered, and knows what pays the rent, so to speak, and that's those first 6 Van Halen records.
I would wholeheartedly agree, except if you look at the Mambo Slammo Jammers, whatever it's called, the first Vegas residency from '95, where there was 0 guitar players in the band, I think that was kind of an attempted jailbreak, no, I'm more than Van Halen. And that stuff has really been wiped from the internet. I was lucky enough like 2 years ago to find kind of like the Tour EPK electronic press kit. If you remember that old music industry jargon.
Yep.
The 5-minute demo documentary kind of thing that they used to put out to promote albums. I found that online, and it had like the phone number for Diamond Dave Productions on it and all that. And it just mysteriously disappeared sometime around the Vegas residency of 2020.
Interesting. You just reminded me too that unlike virtually all veteran acts there, and I'll tell you who the other comparison is in a second, but the Mambo Slammers, whatever it's called, starting with Crazy from the Heat, for goodness sakes, all the way through that weird bluegrass thing that he did. Dave always artistically wants to take chances. So while you might know where that bread is buttered, it also enables him to do some crazy, different, weird ass things, go where his muse is taking him. If that's taking him down a road to do some bizarre film with a bunch of midgets with machine guns in the No Holds Barbecue, so be it. If that takes him to Japan to make some sort of silent film, samurai organized crime movie short, so be it. You know, the only one I can think of who has chased a muse like that, and we're seeing this in play right now, and I'm sure somebody will think of other folks, but Steven Tyler tried to go country for a minute, but that didn't even sound too crazily far from Aerosmith, and certainly the ballads and stuff. But look at Paul Stanley with the Soul Station stuff. Yeah. Stylistically, that's about as far removed from Kiss as you can get. Although I will always venture to say that Paul Stanley brought a lot of soul to that band. I mean, I would love to. I've heard people do covers. There's a great cover online of "Sure Know Something" from the Dynasty record. That song's filled with soul. By the way, co-written by Desmond Child, if I recall. So, I kind of get what you're saying. At the same time, I just think he had to do that in that time, that era there. He wasn't promoting any new record, right? There was after Your Filthy Little Mouth came what? The DLR band record in 95. And was that 98?
DLR band I thought was 98.
98. So Your Filthy Little Mouth was 94. DLR band was 98. And then there was nothing until that Diamond Dave record sometime in 2000. Well, it was before 2007 for the reunion, 2002, 2003. Yeah. So, I mean, it was about getting out there and giving the people what they want, I guess, getting out there and going out on the road. Yeah,
indeed. It was. I cannot confirm nor deny what you're saying. No, I got nothing to go with that. I think the key is we're starting to see more and more things that we forgot about from David Lee Roth's past, including his time with Van Halen, that just keeps popping up on YouTube thanks to these great algorithms. And I'm sure we're going to keep seeing more and more of that. A couple episodes we were talking about that marching band college show that Greg Renoff helped unearth. So
right, which the only people who knew about that were the people who were there, for goodness sakes. I never knew about that.
Exactly. So, and also right after Eddie passed, the Frank Sinatra video intro that had Dave and Eddie in it. I don't think most people knew about that. Like, I can't imagine MTV was playing that a lot.
I remember being extremely excited about that, and MTV did play it at least once because I saw it on MTV for the song. And the song is called "L.A. Is My Lady."
Yes.
Which I don't think anybody at all has. I don't think anybody has been looking for that song at all for any length of time. I don't know if that video is on MTV, but I distinctly remember that I was so excited to see. When you're fans of huge bands like that, especially when you're a teenager, to see anybody in a different sort of element, because there was no internet, you're so excited.
Yeah, rare exposure. And wouldn't that have been filmed after the Panama music video?
I think so, yeah.
So that might have been the last video. The Panama video came out after Hot for the Teacher, or Hot for the Teacher was the last one? That one I'm blanking on right now because there's 3 videos from '84.
Right, yeah, yep.
So was that Frank Sinatra video the last video that Eddie and Dave did? I mean, oh no, I'm sorry, Tattoo, if you want to count that as a real music video, or She's the Woman being like the combined footage. Technically, yes, but I mean, classic Van Halen right there. That might have been the last thing that Eddie and Dave did until the '96 thing.
I think, yeah. I think you're probably right there. So.
Yeah, it's sometimes the last thing that people do is like the least memorable thing of their whole career. But
it's true. It's true. I mean, before the Van Halen reunion, who was really talking about the 2 songs that Dave recorded for the Greatest Hits album besides folks like you and me? I love Me Wise Magic. We've talked about that before, but that would have always been regarded by critics as, this is the last 2 things that they did. Sorry, they never got back together again, and they were just 2 mediocre songs dusted off that Dave recorded some vocals for. I mean, I'm not saying that that's not what I believe, but I just wrote what 90% of critics would have said had they, as part of writing up Eddie's obituary, let's say, or any recap of Eddie's career when they touch on what happened to Van Halen. And it was a shame they never got back together after that ill-fated '96 reunion with MTV, and they did 2 songs for the Greatest Hits album. Boy, what could have been, but their last thing they did was these 2 mediocre songs. That's what it would have been like.
It could have been, but I'm excited to see what else YouTube recommends that I like in the near future. I really think that we've hit the tip of the iceberg when it comes to stuff being unearthed based on how much has come out in just the last 4 or 5 months.
True.
And then other news stories. I mean, you saw the one about Eddie's guitar tech for a few of the later tours who they'd poison.
Yeah, yep. If I knew more about electronics and guitars, that really would have blown my mind. But it was cool. It was cool to get some inside stuff there a little bit, at least as far as. Well, you know what? There was a real interesting part there because if you remember on that, I can't remember what tour was it. I think it was a 2007 the tour where famously, I think it was down south somewhere. Eddie's guitar was way out of tune on Jump. Yeah. And the guitar tech said, no, this is what actually happened. For the one time they didn't come off the stage. And after, I think it was Ain't Talk About Love, and we didn't change guitars, and he was beating the crap out of that guitar, whatever it was. And it wasn't out of tune. It was just, and I was like, wow, that was kind of a little bit behind the curtain. Cause I remember that just like going, oh my God, it's all going to fall apart. This is horrible. Jesus. No, this is right. You watch that on you. I won't watch again. It's like, I don't want it. I cringed.
Yeah, I took 3 big takeaways from that. The first is that Eddie didn't know about that for weeks, apparently, because he doesn't have the keyboard in his in-ear monitors. And that confirms something that I thought, because I watched the last show that they did with Dave in 2015 at the Hollywood Bowl. And and you don't see any change in movement in Eddie's face. So, and he had to repeat himself once or twice to get Eddie to do we invented the rock and roll rumba, and you remember Deep Purple and that kind of thing. And there's no like change in Eddie's. You could tell when somebody's listening, when somebody's not listening. And there was no change from Eddie's face, which made me think, wait, Dave's vocals are not in Eddie's monitor. I have to be right about this. And the fact that he didn't have the keyboard in his monitors, and they did all their rehearsing, even on the Balance tour. This was confirmed by the former drummer of Our Lady Peace, who toured with Van Halen on the Balance tour. They generally rehearsed guitar, bass, drums, no vocals. So I'm wondering if
they sound checked that way, right?
They sound checked that way. So if he didn't have keyboard in his in-ears or his monitors performing live, I don't know. I think maybe he on purpose did not have Dave's vocals going on in his head. So that was the first thing that I noticed. The second thing I thought is amazing, which is they grabbed him from Poison. Now, everyone except yours truly looks down on Poison. They're always thought of as like the lightest of the hard rock bands, that they're pop metal, that they were studio manufactured. Clearly, they're better than you think. If they would go, oh, look at how he handles CeCe DeVille's guitars, he could handle Eddie's. So that kind of elevates Poison a few levels for me. And then what was the third part? Was it that Eddie was shopping at Ralph's?
Oh, yeah. Well, the guitar tech, his name now just escapes me. He right before he was going to 5150, he said, let me stop at Ralph's and pick up a couple of things. I don't know how long I'm going to be there. And I don't know, is food involved in this? It's probably going to be a long marathon, whatever it was, session or whatever they were doing. And he said in this interview, as he was thinking, wouldn't it be funny if I run into Dave's? I'm this close to Eddie's. I want to run into Ed, I should say. I'm this close to his house. And he said, just as he thought about that, Eddie's coming up to him going, hey, I mean, it's completely serendipitous. I love hearing stories like that.
There's lots of stories over the years. Ralph from the band Steel Panther. Wait. No. I'm sorry. He's not Ralph. He's Michael. Is he Michael Diamond? Michael Starr. We didn't talk to Ralph.
Yes.
We spoke to Michael Starr. Right. Wrestling kayfabe. He had a story about like running into Eddie in like the early 2000s, with the period after Sharon, before Roth was back, running into him at Staples, like picking up office supplies and kind of kicking himself, going, "Hey, who's your singer? I could sing all your stuff." So you just reminded me, these sorts of stories. What celebrity magazine was it? Was it Us Magazine, where there's always that spread? They're just like us. There's Ryan Reynolds crossing the street from Trader Joe's, And yeah. I remember, I wouldn't even know, again, I certainly wasn't looking for this, but believe it or not, there was video on YouTube many years ago of Dave tucking into a salad at some food court. And I remember thinking, why am I found it by accident. And then reading some of the comments was like, what is he sitting there alone for? It's like, and I'm just like, first off, somebody shot this. So shame on you, let alone uploaded it. Second of all, who gives a shit? But then again, that same person in me, it's like when you see your heroes they're just like us, they shop at Ralph's. I mean, and I've heard various stories of that. I mean, what was it, a couple of years ago, somebody got a picture of Dave coming out of a cigar shop, on a bright sunny afternoon. He got his Mercedes and drove away and said hi, I mean, and we always talk about this, but Dave, and especially the last couple of years, Dave's sightings, my God, you don't know whether he could be on any side of the earth, for goodness sakes. Has he been in Japan right now? Who knows? Eddie's sightings were certainly rare, even when he was healthy, right? Alex, you never see. I mean, seriously, they were amazing at keeping this shit locked down. And I suppose when you make that much money and you can live a lifestyle where maybe you don't have to go out all the time. So we sit there and go, how cool would it be to run into freaking Eddie Van Halen and Ralph's? You could have a lot, probably. And, how great would it be to see Dave putting a little ranch dressing on his freaking Chipotle salad or whatever the hell he was eating? I don't freaking know. But, I mean, just so it's with a kind of a weird goofiness. I have to laugh, but also be randomly curious about that stuff. But then check myself and go, come on. I think that you'll change your mind for the better when you look at Gene Simmons at Costco photos, because Gene Simmons loves some Costco and the paparazzi gets him there a lot. And he is about his love for Costco.
But who the hell am I? All right. If I saw David Lee Roth or Gene in Costco, well, one, I wouldn't go up to either of them. I would just, I mean, in previous careers, and you've met him too. I mean, I don't like to impose. I've done dozens of backstages and done events with artists before and stuff like that. And I don't want to, I'm not going to name drop, but some were heroes, and I've been lucky to meet a lot of heroes. I've never met Kiss. I've never met Dave. But if I saw them, if it was an event where you're supposed to meet him, it's one thing. But if I saw any one of those guys, would I gawk? Would I stare? Would I be checking things out? Yeah, but that would be from 30 feet away, and I damn sure wouldn't be taking video of it. I just wouldn't feel right about that. It's this weird imposition. Leave him be. Now, when I go back to my friends, go, you would not fucking believe it, but Gene bought at Costco. He loves the freaking Kirkland rotisserie chicken. It's amazing. I heard him talking to the guy. He said he loves it. He said it's a great deal for $4.99 or whatever it is. I would go back and I would be, talking about that for 3 weeks, but I wouldn't tape it. I wouldn't.
I'd say it depends. It depends on karmically how bad they are. Because let's say Yngwie Malmsteen, and you think about all the bad situations that Yngwie.
Wait a minute, that's Yngwie J. Malmsteen.
Oh, you're correct. It's Yngwie J. Malmsteen. Because there's a lot of them.
Not to
get confused. He was trying to join that musicians union, and there was already an Yngwie Malmsteen, so you had to be sure, of course. If you look at all the hard times that he's put people through, I wouldn't mind razzing Yngwie in public, because if you ever hear the tape of him unleashing the fury, his words, at a flight attendant, there's certain people you wouldn't want to bother, say, Dennis DeYoung from Styx, because he seems like a nice guy. But Yngwie, yeah, different story.
But I just love seeing stuff like that anyway. Do you remember, I think we talked about this, but coming back from, was it Australia, I think it was, when Van Halen did a couple of dates in Australia, Sebastian Bach of Skid Row found himself sitting next to David Lee Roth on the jumbo jet on the way back to LA. And he said I heard him on an interview back in the summertime on Eddie Trunk, and he said Dave was reading and they're talking, and they would just laugh their asses off. And there's a picture of the two of them together, and Dave's got like cheaters on or whatever. And it's just, I mean, that's why I loved Candid Camera as a kid. Not so much of a weird. It wasn't some sort of. All right, listen. Some people get hit in the groin is always a good laughter. So America's Funniest Home Video, sure. But seeing your heroes when they're just like us, or just in a different element than you're used to seeing, it's kind of cool. I don't even know how we got on this long. We just went off on some crazy ass.
Because I said the
non sequitur.
Gene Simmons Costco. And that is just a pathway to internet gold. It's like when you put in Glenn Danzig cat litter. There's that great meme of him shopping for kitty litter, and that's kind of viral. But I'd say if we could recap our conversation, good interview with Eddie's former guitar tech, great performance by Wolfie on Jimmy Kimmel Live. Interesting to see what happens from that. Dave had a great Larry King interview in '88, a not so stellar 2005 Craig Ferguson interview for Strumming with the Devil. Steve would not bother Dave at Costco if he saw him, but if he saw him eating a salad, he'd be intrigued.
Sure.
Stuff might be unearthed again soon, hopefully. Did we miss anything here?
Well, it's all been pretty quiet on the news front, except one last thing here kind of popped off recently. And I don't know I know you saw this. We were trading links about it, but I saw a blog post go around. Can you help with a 30-year-old David Lee Roth quest? And it is actually, it's an extremely long story. It might take you a minute, but it's really, really cool. Back in '88, this 13-year-old girl was seeing David Lee Roth solo, seeing David Lee Roth for the first time, and Dave called her up on stage and pulled her up on stage, and he came off stage, and then came back and said to her, "Do you want to dance?" And then brought her up on stage, and they danced. And the whole quest is, does anybody have any pictures of this from back in 1988? And you probably read about this. You might know a little bit more about it, but I just thought it was a really cool, cute, although albeit pretty lengthy sort of piece. It took me a minute to just yeah.
As the young ones say, it's a TL semicolon DR. that the too long didn't read.
Too long didn't read. But you know what? It's actually kind of it's very much, not to critique anybody's writing, but all the details of this experience for this young girl she wrote about. It was actually pretty cool. But I guess Dave bent down and said, "Want to dance?" And pulled her up to dance. I think, was it during Jump, maybe?
During Jump. Yeah. And the story goes that he never pulls up anybody on stage ever.
Never heard of that happening.
But he, as the story goes, pulled her up, and it's one of those, I swear this happened, and everyone going, yeah, right, where's the photos? And the person next to her, she thought, was taking photos of it, but the photos were exposed or didn't come out, or she lost touch with the person. I think the question is, does somebody have the whole show from Toronto 88 on YouTube? I'm pretty sure that one has come up for me on YouTube, but I didn't watch it to the end.
Yeah, good question. That's the thing, and that's one of the things that always bugs me, and I think this is a big miss when it comes to David Lee Roth and his career, is that there was never a home video released of either Eat 'Em and Smile or the Skyscraper Tour, particularly the Skyscraper Tour with the surfboard and just the light show. And I mean, Eat 'Em and Smile had the boxing. Eat 'Em and Smile had the biggest lighting rig up until that point, that time. But can you imagine like a pro shot 10 camera? Just imagine it starts off with that very high speed little bit of film of the stage being all put together. You've seen this in dozens of concert films, right? With the trucks pulling in, and it's a super fast speeded up film to see 4 hours worth of work compressed into 30 seconds. Yeah. And then taking the little backstage footage, taking the stage. I mean, God, the fact that there was never, and certainly nothing close to this is leaked on YouTube, but was there? Then there's bootlegs out there, but not a ton. But certainly nothing like really professionally shot. The fact that Warner's didn't go to Dave and just bango at a time when home video concert videos were starting to blow up. The fact that Warner's didn't go and said and who knows, maybe they did and Dave said no. I don't know. I have no idea. But it always seemed to be a big miss as far as what could have been a great piece for their catalog.
Have you ever seen the 88 Skyscraper Tour Japan shows that they put on YouTube?
Yes, I've seen bits and pieces. The audio and the video isn't always synced up, but
but some of the video looks like it was totally professional. Like, how would they have gotten those angles? And
You're right.
So where I'm going with that is lately, because of YouTube thinking that I want to see a full Danger Danger concert from 1991, it keeps giving me all these concerts that look like they were shown on Japanese television in the early 90s. And they're totally pro-shot things. I don't know if they were just like one-off concert specials, but all these cool things of Night Ranger, Skid Row. I just said Danger Danger. I think I've seen 2 Danger Danger ones, which makes me believe that maybe Danger Danger was huge in Japan and just bigger than they were in the States. But what I'm getting is maybe these 88 Roth shows were part of a TV special over there. Because haven't we talked briefly about how for The Little Ain't Enough, like he did some TV commercials over there promoting the album?
It was either that or Skyscraper, but you just remind me that it could have been it probably was, there was something broadcast, I bet, on Japanese TV, because lots of bands did that. I mean, the footage that you see from Cheap Trick's live at Budokan, the concert footage from all that was from Budokan, I think, Another Night in Japan. And that whole DVD did come out when they reissued, I think it was the 25th or 30th anniversary of Budokan, in like a 2 DVD or 2 CD and 1 DVD. It's a great package they put together. But that whole concert, and that was in 79 or whatever, 78, 79, I'm sure they weren't thinking of home video, but that was recorded for the Japanese market. I'm sure it was broadcasted sometime. Maybe that's the same thing that happened with Skyscraper on that tour. And but just how cool would it have been, man? Come on, Steve Vai's heart guitar, the whole bit, the 3-neck thing. Are you kidding me? Dave's weird headband that tour, which always drove me crazy, that weird hairstyle. I mean, dude, the Bolero jacket, which, remember, that was the first time we kind of saw that, and then he brought a variation of that in 2007 back in the reunion. These are the dopey things that freaking keep me up at night as a fan, man.
But the footage of the boxing ring is perfectly shot so that you couldn't just think that a fan snuck in a great camcorder and knew where all the lighting cues were going to hit during that show. That's why I think it was a properly filmed thing that either aired on TV or just got nixed and put in the vaults because maybe he didn't approve it. So maybe one of our crack listeners will know what the answer to that is. Kind of like when we were talking to Ron Wixo that we learned about a 94 live EP that we didn't know existed.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So if we just pull all of our brain power together, we can solve this and other 30-year-old Dave mysteries.
There you go. All right. Well, I'm just thinking, Darren, this conversation, of course, as always, we start off in one place, we end up somewhere else. That's what happens when two fans, not fanboys, prattle on and on about the mighty Diamond David Lee Roth, I guess.
I guess, yeah, that basically sounds about right. But I think we've solved the mysteries here. You're all better people as a result of listening for these 35 minutes or so. So you're welcome.
There you go. Well, I'll tell you, if you have, if those of you out there get half as much enjoyment out of this as we do chatting about it, we'll consider that a victory. So,
wait, was that a Roth lyric? No,
I don't think.
Sometimes I just have to make sure that wasn't a deep cut. It was not an alternate take from the vaults.
No. Not at all. So, all right. Well, folks, thanks for downloading and streaming. We really appreciate it, of course. Be sure to check out our previous episodes if you're new to the podcast. We got some great stuff there. Got some great stuff coming ahead, too, in the next couple episodes, some more cool interviews. And from here, I'm saying good night.
Yeah, thank you. Great Shabbos. Good night.